So we moved to South Korea the year I turned 8. And that nursery rhyme was the first thing I learned how to say in Korean, which was great, because the first thing I learned about Korea started with a butt joke. And as an 8-year-old, I was pretty euphoric at the idea that butts are cross-culturally funny. And the shared sense of humor helped to forge a point of connection, or a way to start building friendships with other people. By the time we moved to South Korea, we had already moved at least 10 times. This was across different houses, cities, and states. And these moves were always near my birthday. It was the start of the school year. I think this familiarity with moving helped me navigate being a child overseas. I understood the importance of finding these points of connection with new people. None of our moves were for government work. My parents weren't in the military or working for a Department of Defense schools or the State Department or a major non-governmental organization or one of the numerous other groups. We didn't live in an expatriate enclave in Seoul. We lived in a relatively normal high-rise apartment complex. Seoul is the largest and most densely populated metropolitan area that I have ever lived in and will ever live in. I looked up the population in the 90s, and it was around 10 million people, and that's a lot. So our complex was 15 or so buildings, all with over 10 floors. And that year, I was the only American child living in our densely populated apartment complex. Had we lived in an expat enclave, like an embassy or on the base, finding those points of connection with my peers would have been easy. We had a shared cultural background and language and immigration status that would have provided us with multiple ways to communicate and to develop friendships. Being the only American child made it so that I had a considerably fewer avenues of connection with my peer group. And this was especially obvious with Korean food culture. Food is such an important way people build community and relationships. And it truly helps to highlight regionality. It's a great way to experience culture shock and homesickness. I clearly remember getting a bright cherry red popsicle that was actually frozen red bean paste, and a bag of Butterfinger BBs that did keep the chocolate shell, but replaced the peanut butter with a vegetable mash. Both of these experiences emphasized my food culture and the expectations that I have, like that bright red is cherry, and that candy doesn't have vegetables. And how those cultural expectations were clashing with where I physically was. I also had no familiarity with a lot of popular children's snacks. The brown sugar-coated dehydrated cuttlefish was the most unfamiliar of them, as well as the most popular. Sweet seafood is still not a category of food I'm comfortable with. I did try the cuttlefish, and it was too unfamiliar. My friends' moms all learned that I didn't like the cuttlefish snacks, so they started to make sure that I had hard-boiled eggs instead. They also made sure I always had a serving of sweet corn. It didn't matter what we were eating: eggs, ramen, pizza, fried rice, bibimbap. There was always corn. Eventually, a friend told me it was because Americans loved corn, and her mom wanted to make sure I felt welcome. The corn was a point of connection. It was a way to offer community. These points of connection made our year in Korea one of learned familiarity and community. We need discomfort to grow, and we also need time and comfort to rest. There is a Goldilocks amount of discomfort that we need in order to feel safe enough to grow. By being in an environment that was defined by its unfamiliarity, it made having those points of connection essential in order to have the space to rest and to feel comfortable. These points of connection also helped me in a place that was, to help keep me in a place that was willing to embrace the wonder and awe of what we were seeing. So much about South Korea in the mid-90s was very similar to the West that I had grown up in, yet it was very different. It was like looking through everything through a filter. This was nearly a decade after the '88 Summer Olympics and about half a decade before the FIFA World Cup. So it looked like a modern city with a Western skyline. There were car-centered streets and overpasses. When our 16-hour direct flight from Detroit landed in Seoul, everything looked familiar, except for how it was so very different. I expected to hear and see languages that weren't English, but I didn't expect that the streetlights would be a different color, or that all of the road signs would be different colors, that the green telling us how far away another city was would be a different hue. Everything was new and novel. It was all built on a familiar foundation, our human need for comfort and community. We want to share our cultures, our communities, our comforts with other people in our lives, and we want to do it in ways that we know are affirmed, appreciated, and loved. We want to create space for people to push into their discomfort and to grow. We want to have the spaces for people to find acceptance and to rest. These are difficult things to provide, and there is very little space for passive action. Creating spaces where people feel safe enough to be uncomfortable is a daily choice. And creating the space where you can experience newness and novelty is a daily choice. And they are active decisions that are not easy to make. And maybe it's an easier choice when it comes to welcoming a solo, slightly strange child into your community. It might also be easier when your only reasonable choice is to stay outside of your comfort zone. That is not a situation we're likely to encounter. Living within our familiar culture gives us different opportunities and expectations for community, comfort, and growth than living in an unfamiliar culture does. How we choose to share our culture, comfort, community, and growth with others feels especially poignant to me at the start of a school year, because we moved at the start of every school year. I'm actually being playful about it. I really liked the life I had growing up. It was fantastic. But it was stressful, yeah. How we choose to, it is also very poignant how we choose to explore and forge new connections. A new school year offers promises of change, novelty, new understandings, and contextualizations. These promises of change are their most exciting right now, even if it takes an entire year for them to be realized. And I truly believe that the year I spent in South Korea as an 8-year-old helped show me how to step out of my comfort zone and how to figure out ways to navigate doing that safely.